Hi, I'm here with Colin Mitchell from Talking Electronics fame. Everyone in Australia will instantly recognise the name Colin Mitchell and his Talking Electronics magazine. And if you want to know, I get asked all the time where I learned electronics and how I learned electronics. Well, this man had a big hand in it, so thank you very much, Colin.
Good, that's lovely to see you,
Talking
Dave.
Electronics, I learned a lot of electronics from the
well,
Talking Electronics magazine, and we're here. Colin's going to take us through some old stuff, and we're going to talk about the history of Talking Electronics.
Now, I just want to mention this particular little episode, right? Now, I didn't particularly want to spend a lot of money on printing the magazine, having all that expense of writing the magazine and actually laying it all out. So I went to Electronics Australia.
What date was this?
Well, 1985,
1985?
is the letter I've got. And I just can't remember just how advanced I was. But the basic concept was that I went to them and I said, look, instead of me putting out this magazine being in competition with you, what I suggest is that I want to put in, say, 24 pages in the middle of your magazine as a pull-out section. I didn't particularly want to have advertising in it so that people can understand just simple projects, and maybe I could back them up with a kit, because there wasn't kits in those days as such.
Were Dick Smith doing kits
no,
around
not
that time?
no, he wasn't. No, they were probably doing a few odd kits. They had funways and things, but they didn't really specialise in having the kit from Electronics Australia in that month. They might have had to print a circuit board, because I went along to Electronics and I asked him that does he sell Electronics Australia kits? He said, oh, we don't have any kits from them, but they do send us down printed circuit boards each month, and they're there available, and the people can make up the kit by going around the store making the kit. I said, well, how many hundred kits do you sell from each of the kits per month? He said, Colin, hundreds? He said, we get 20 boards. I said, oh, well, that's good, 20 boards from each kit, and how many do you sell? He said, come and I'll show you. So we went upstairs in the shop, and had a great big tray this high, the size of a table, with hundreds of printed circuit boards on, all in plastic bags. And he said, they're the boards. I said, well, how many? He said, maybe one or two. Oh. So I looked at them. They had no overlay on them, no legend, no tinning. They were no tinning, just bare copper.
Wow.
But the worst part is that they had no numbers or names on them except EA 4176/3024974. Who knows? Not a name on it, not even the name of the kit, just a number. Well, how on earth could you work that out?
That's crazy.
That's madness. So I realised I learnt my lesson. Never do that. So I was the first person, even in those days, to put a legend on all the boards, to tin them, and also to put solder mask on them.
Oh, solder mask was, wow, that was...
That's right. No one did it. It was all available.
Yeah.
None of the boards did it. They were just bare copper. So, anyway, that going ahead of the point. Before all that, I went along to Electronics Australia and I sent them a letter to say that I didn't particularly want to spend all the money on a magazine. What about putting in 24 pages, a pull-out section? And I got a letter back.
This is the reign of Jim Rowe.
Yes, that's right.
Australia.
Yes, Jim Rowe sent me a letter back. Just sort of saying that, that all the costs involved in putting in these 24 pages and things like that, and not terribly happy about it, but if you want to go ahead with it, look, we'll consider it. He said, but on the second page, he said, just in case you don't turn up with the goods, the 24 pages, there will be a figure of $7,500 fine. Now, $7,500 in those days.
That's
my car cost me $3,500.
Oh, no.
It was 2 cars.
In other words, he didn't want you to do it. That was...
I wasn't prepared. So,
Yep.
so 3 or 4 years later, he saw me. He came down and saw me. And he said, "Oh, you probably didn't like what I wrote in the letter." I said, "I certainly didn't. I never replied. I didn't want to have the embarrassment of replying or saying anything.
Right.
But the shock of $7,500 fine was astronomical."
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, yes, because the magazine only cost me less than $5,000 for 10,000 copies. It was about 50 cents a copy.
Wow.
So you can imagine a $7,000 fine was a huge amount in those days. So that's the main thing. I'm just saying this, that you know, there's always more than one way of doing business, always more than one way. If something goes wrong, always say, well, you've learnt a lesson.
Yep.
There was a reason for that. And the reason was I started my magazine and it succeeded. It was a huge success. I sold hundreds of thousands of kits. They're one of the biggest kit makers until the others came in. They saw how many kits I was making, and then J-Car started up again. Gary Johnson bought J-Car, and he did the kits. And of course, then we've got Altronics.
Yes.
He started making the kits, and of course, they did. They made Electronics Australia kits and ETI kits, and they were quite successful. So I did have competition, but I knew that I had my own kits, and they were totally different kits. They were a very simple kit, but we did sell many. I think it was about 30,000 FM bug just of the ant.
Just of the ant.
Just the ant, because we put the board on the magazine.
Yes.
It was a very cheap board, and I didn't particularly like it, but the manufacturer had very thin paper Bakelite board. Then he said, "Look, I'll do the boards for 5 cents for you." And
5 cents?
5 cents, yes.
Wow. I always wondered, what was the motivation for putting the PCB on the front cover?
5 cents. Because
it was just cost.
Yes.
It was so cheap, you figured
that's
might as
right.
well.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the expensive part was sitting down and actually sticky taping them on. You know, you could only do a few hundred an hour. And I was there every night doing a couple of hundred an hour. I had people coming around, $5 an hour, just hours and hours of work. Well, 20,000 magazines to put them on. And then, of course, we had PC boards that were stapled on.
Yes, I remember the stapled ones.
And I designed the stapling machine to push the pedal, because you need an enormous amount of pressure to push those staples, 2 staples at a time. Yeah. And I had a very big leverage on the actual mechanism. I had a huge leverage.
So you custom built that just for one.
We had 2 machines. We had 2 machines.
Okay, and you could rejig it for each magazine. Or did you put a common tooling hole?
That's right. The holes were always in the same place.
Right.
So the magazine always fitted in the spot.
Yep.
The board went on, and the 2 staples went down at the same time.
Fantastic.
And we had two. We used old television cabinets to mount the staplers on. We had 2 staplers on it on each machine, and we had to have 2 machines because you had to do 20,000. And it took weeks and weeks to do it. But there's another little bit of engineering that I designed those stapling machines to staple those staples on. And they were 50 cents a board, because they were glass, they're fiberglass.
That's right, they were fiberglass. And
they were good quality, and they had...
they had overlay. I don't think they didn't have solder masks.
Yeah, no, they didn't have solder masks, but they had tin. They were tinned.
Right.
They were tinned, but not solder masked,
That's
and they had an overlay on them. Yep. And they were 50 cents a board. If it were 20,000, 50 cents.
And who made the boards?
Well, I had 3 different people making them. One was better than the other, and I had different manufacturers all beating each other in the price. But the local man, he really boomed, because it was cash, and it was a $20,000 a board production line. And you can just imagine, in those days they had quad drills, and they could only drill, I think, 3 or 4 deep. And 4 of them, so they had boards, they're about 8 boards on a panel, but they were quad drills, and you can imagine hundreds of holes in each one, and just doing the same board for 20,000. There was weeks of work, but they did it. They did it, and we got through, and they were a huge success. And it started people off, because the boards from overseas, again, the English magazine had them, no overlay on them, no tinning, just pure copper. No identification on them at all. It was just, I've still got the boards, because it wasn't a pleasure making them. Right. It was just really, the boards, they weren't a very good project anyway, but it just wasn't worthwhile making the things, because it just didn't finish up. All our boards finished up beautiful, all finished up the best you could do in those days. So it was a huge advancement. We did actually start a few original ideas. The printed circuit board was one, and the other thing was to have least or no advertising in it.
Yes, I know. You were very... And you like to talk about that in the magazine too. You like to tell readers about... I remember you giving stories.
Yes, because what happened is that I did a little bit of work with one of the magazine people, and what I particularly didn't like was that the first thing they did, they laid all the sheets out. All the pages were all laid out on a huge table. And the first thing that came along with the advertising people put all their layout all on the magazine. Right, and he turned around to me and a couple of... Now, fill the holes.
Oh, no.
And I thought, that's what they treat you like.
Right.
All the editorial, all the most important material is just fill the holes.
Oh.
Now, that was their attitude. And I said, I will never, ever present that attitude to people, that I'm just writing on the back of your ad.
Yeah,
so that's the reason why I wrote no or very little advertising, because I didn't like you thumbing through Electronics Australia or any of those magazines. And in fact, what I've done is I've taken the hundreds of magazines I had, which have filled up all these shelves here. I took out all the articles, and the articles are only this high.
Right.
All the rest I put in the bin.
Yep.
Now I've sorted them out all into articles, and of all those probably 4 meters high, finished up that much worth of articles.
Oh, fantastic.
So,
how did you produce the magazine back in those days? Because there was no computer,
No.
right? So it was all just literally you would...
on a typewriter.
On a typewriter,
we'll call it electronic typewriter. It had a memory in it.
Right.
And it was all hand done, all stuck down. Every little tiny thing was all electroset.
Stuck down with glue?
That horrible cow gum.
Oh.
But of course the cow gum makes all the paper brown.
Right, yep.
And so that all the artwork I've got now is absolutely worthless.
Oh, it's ruined.
It's all brown. It's as brown as a berry now.
Oh,
and even though the pieces have all stuck down, some of those circuit diagrams would have had over 100 little stick downs.
Wow.
Because everything had to be stuck down, all letrosetted.
Yep.
Because letroset was very expensive. So we finished up typing out all those different symbols and just sticking them down as separate items. But that's all we had.
Wow. And that's why you hand drew a lot of... you hand wrote a lot of your 10-minute digital
Well,
course
that was another concept. On that grid idea, that was another concept. I had seen it somewhere else, and the other person said, "Oh, you copied me." I said, "Well, of course I copied you, because it's a
Who was
brilliant."
that?
That was the man from America.
Oh, Forrest Mims.
Yes,
oh,
that's right. It was copied from him.
Engineers Mini Notebooks.
That's right.
That's right.
So that I had the
Well,
grid.
it's hardly original, though.
Oh no, his was original, but I got 100 sheets printed with a very grey grey stipple, and with a black board around. I got 100 sheets printed, and of course, when you write on, you can't afford to make a mistake, because any whiteout is showing.
Yeah, it shows out.
So be very careful to write to the page. It was a lot of work.
Did you draft them first?
No, I
draft?
didn't.
No,
I just sat down
and carefully thought about it.
That's right, and worked it out to the page.
Yep.
And it takes a lot of time, because you had to do it all by hand with a very fine black tip pen. You couldn't make a mistake, and you had to think about it. Wow. But it was very successful. It was another concept of teaching someone, because some people are visual, some people want to see diagrams and drawings, and of course now that we've got videos, that's going to teach a lot more people, because a lot of electronics people may not be able to work out the square root of -4, but they can certainly make a project.
Absolutely.
And they can solder, and they can think.
Yeah.
So that people have a certain ability. So you've got to cotton onto that ability and say, look, once you learn electronics, you're made. You are absolutely made, because you can go into servicing, design, you can go into so many areas. And you don't have to be a brilliant engineer. You don't have to even be able to know the English language backwards. But electronics is a different field.
Well, it's a practical field. As long as you can build something and possibly reproduce it.
It's something we can't put our finger on.
Yep.
Because some of the cleverest people that I've had are just the average person that has come along, but absolutely brilliant electronics, but only did very average in school.
Yep.
So they're the people that we're trying to encourage, and with videos and all these different areas. And sometimes these people click and they say, "Hey, that's for me." Yep. And the younger you get, it's wonderful. But whatever the age is, if you can just click on electronics, you can make it and become successful. And that's what we're all here for. That's why we've got all these different areas and videos and the internet and all these different areas that people can just pick up on electronics.
Do you have any idea of what your demographics were back in the heyday? What age groups people were? Was it mainly
young
kids?
people?
It was mainly kids.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Because who saw the magazine in the newsagent? Because this is before the internet, kiddies. Yes,
that's right.
We didn't, you know. You see, went into the newsagent.
My idea is to get the person very, very young and bring them up to that level. That's the level that's never covered by any of the institutions, never covered by the universities or any of the technical schools. They all want you to know something, or they teach you far too much mathematics, and then it slows you down. You think, all this math, you don't need it. Yep. If you want to do something, put the resistors in, put them in parallel, measure it. Exactly. And you find that you'd spend 10 minutes working out the value and only a fraction of a second to measure it on a meter. I know. Why learn if resistors in parallel?
Why learn triple calculus and Maxwell's equations and everything else?
Okay, it's wonderful to be able to have that ability, but I'm just saying you can get through without it.
Yep.
You can get through with just using test equipment, and you can do amazing things with the simplest of test equipment.
Absolutely.
So you don't need expensive things. You can do it with experimentation and developing things. So that was my area, to just teach people, just to bring them up without expensive equipment and complicated circuit diagrams, just to teach them the basics. And it was a huge success because we sold, well, we were one of the biggest kit suppliers.
Hundreds of thousands of kits.
That's right.
Fantastic.
Very successful.
How many copies of each issue did you produce? And
well, what happened is that we printed 20,000. You see, what happened is that I went to Electronics Australia and I said, well, how many copies do you sell? And they said, our readership is 72,000. So I thought, oh, well, if that's 72,000, look, I'll just print 20 or 25,000 and see how it goes. So we sold, out of the 25,000, we sold about 14,000.
Yep.
And I thought, well, that was fair enough because I'm only dealing with a very small,
very small niche
area. Yeah. No amateurs, none of the people in audio.
Yep.
There was a whole lot of areas that we didn't cover. Didn't cover the high technicians, things like that. Then I had a few magazines out, and then I found the truth with Electronics Australia. When they say 72,000 with their readership, they multiply the sold copies by 2.3.
Why 2.3?
That was just the way they did it.
Just the magic number, huh?
That's right. So that when they were trying to sell advertising, they said our readership is 72,000. So divide 72,000 by 2.3, so that's less than half, so that's 30,000. You
won't be surprised to know I've learnt the same thing once I've got into this business or advertising and everything else.
Yes.
It's still going on today in the electronics
lies and
magazines.
Deception.
It is.
That's right.
Yep.
So that's the reason why I only tell the truth.
Yep.
It's absolutely pointless. A readership is a pointless figure. How many sold copies? I sold about 14,000.
Right.
So what happened is that the other 6,000 or 8,000 that weren't sold, I'd got about 3,000 or 4,000 back.
Yep.
I had to pay for them 5 cents a copy, but they said the other ones were lost. I know they were sold and I didn't get it.
Right.
So that was why the newsagents make a fortune, because they normally get 25%. They get 100% when they say that they haven't sold it, but don't return. They've been stolen or they're Have you ever seen a newsagent go under? They don't, because they're living off all the magazines. Yep. So I got back about 60 or 70,000 by the time I'd done a lot of magazines and a lot of other ones. Yep. So what I decided to do, I decided to put them into packs of 2 and 3.
No, I remember that. Yep, you sold them off.
And we sold them again to the people for a few dollars for 3 magazines. Yep. So that every single magazine was sold. We didn't waste any.
Yep.
So the whole, we printed about 20,000, multiplied by about 25 different issues. Mm-hmm. And some of them were reprinted again. So overall, I think there was about between 500 to 700,000 copies were actually sold, because even the ones that were stolen from the shop, they were still sold copies. Somebody got them in the finish. because the newsagent just couldn't account for them. So that was a huge success there.
Did you find that your readership increased? It pretty much was constant from day one.
Yes, that's right. It didn't change. Yes, it didn't change. So after about the 9th or 10th issue, somebody said to me, "Oh, put colour on the cover."
Right.
So on the 10th issue for the...
That's right, you changed the colour.
That's right, so we put four colour cover.
Yep.
4 colours.
How much extra did that cost?
$2,000 or $3,000 more.
Wow,
we had to get separations,
Yep.
and it was a 4-colour machine instead of a 2-colour machine.
Right.
So it cost quite a few $1,000s more. Do you know it didn't increase the sales?
Really?
Yes, we only did it for 1 or 2 times, and then we went back to 2-colour.
Right.
It didn't change. I just wanted to prove to people that electronics people are not interested in colour.
No, content.
That's right.
It's all about the content.
So the wonderful thing we get now from Silicon Chip, that is the top magazine in the world.
Yep.
The colour, the quality of the paper, the articles. In fact, EPA, the English magazine, is just stealing the content, holers bowlers.
There's a licensing agreement between the two.
That's right.
They just
holers bowlers.
republish.
It's all Jim's Row, and it's all 10-year-old stuff that's all going in there. It's directly inserted, and it's improved their magazine considerably.
Exactly.
But England did have a very good magazine, Maplin magazine.
Maplin,
it was all colour. They couldn't keep it up because it was too expensive.
Right.
The overheads were too much.
Right. How many magazines were there in Australia back in the peak?
5.
5.
There was Elector.
Elector, that wasn't Australian though.
Yes, it was.
Was it?
Yes.
They did an Australian.
Yes, Hands, he brought it here.
Right.
Hands brought it here.
Right.
For 4 or 5 issues.
Oh, okay.
He got the license and he reprinted it. He got slightly.
I don't ever remember seeing it in my newsagent.
Right. It was only for a few months.
Right.
Then there was ETI.
Yes.
Then there was Electronics Australia.
Yep.
Then there was Hobby Projects.
Oh, was that a separate one?
That was the competition to me.
Right.
What happened is that when I got my magazine out, it was only just started to come out. I don't know whether I got the first issue out or not, but Electronics Australia found out about it. And it was Colin Rivers found out about the magazine. And he sent all his men around to all the electronic shops to sell them half-price advertising for 12 months.
Oh, no.
So that when I sent my man around, I sent Bill around there, he got to the 3rd shop in the city there, and he rang me up and said, Electronics Australia, ETI International, has been around and has sold them all advertising for 12 months at half price, and they've got no money left over for anything else. I said, don't worry, Bill, come back and I'll cut the advertising. I won't put any advertising at all, and we'll continue on with no advertising at all. So that's what happened there.
Right.
Then what they did is they brought their magazine Hobby Electronics in with Phil Waite and various other different people.
Oh, okay, yes, I remember the name.
And mine was $1.25 or $1.20, $1.25. Right. They brought theirs in for 95 cents. Right. Then they started with 30,000. Then they brought next one 40,000.
Wow.
Then they flooded it with 50,000. Then after 6 months, Colin Rivers rang me up, and I remember I was sitting in the room, the phone rang, and said, Colin Rivers here, and he said, you've won the day. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we're pulled out.
Yep.
With the magazine. It cost us $40,000 or $50,000. And
they were running at a loss, were they? Or
obviously they were. They had very little advertising in it, but they wanted to knock me because they just didn't want the competition. I said, it's made no difference to me. I still sell my 10 to 14,000. It's made no difference to me because they knew that it was competition, and they wanted to knock that because there's only ETI in Electronics Australia.
Was there Australian Electronics Monthly back then?
Yes, that was taken off. That was another one that was taken from the man who had a son as well in electronics. He had a son. He did a lot of writing for the magazine, and that was a takeoff because one of them he left somewhere else, and he started Australian Electronics Monthly from ETI.
Roger Harrison. Roger Harrison, I think.
Could be. He had a son.
Anyway,
he had a son. He wrote a few articles as well.
Yep.
So that and Silicon Chip, of course, left Electronics
Australia.
Australia.
So about 87, was it? 80.
I don't remember, something
late
like
80s?
Yes.
Yeah, they started Silicon Chip.
That's right, and that was all full colour.
Yep.
Of course, that's been a huge success.
Yep.
And of course, that was the one that really killed Electronics Australia.
Yep.
And killed ETI.
Yep.
And killed Australian Electronics Monthly, whatever.
Yep.
It changed its name.
Well, Federal Publishing killed it. They tried to turn it into a glossy consumer magazine. And
did they?
All the customers
revolted.
Yes,
that's right, yes.
It originally...
Right. They cut out all the technical articles and all the hobby things.
All hobby stuff was gone,
yes.
and it was just
that
CD player reviews and
right.
all sorts of stuff. And it lasted about 5 issues or something, and then it just died. So
No, Silicon Chip is brilliant. It is absolutely top quality for a tiny country like Australia.
I know.
They were very successful. Those notebooks were very successful.
The Engineers Electronics notebooks, starting with TTL. There we go.
That's right. Yes,
and these are all hand.
Yeah, some of the pages were hand done.
Some of the pages were hand drawn.
Yes.
There we go. All hand drawn stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then you just photo reduce these, obviously.
Yes, I did. They reduced too much. They reduced to 50%. It was too much.
Right.
You can only reduce something to 70%.
Yep.
It's still readable.
Okay,
50%,
and
it's not readable.
It wasn't readable.
No.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. Mate.
And they don't produce magazines like this anymore. It's all computer, desktop publishing.
Well,
when did the desktop publishing thing start? Do you know?
Oh, well, my first one was about $3,000 or $4,000. It was electronic typewriter.
Yep.
And it was called Justify, so that you type it all out, and then you push the button, and it would justify.
It would justify
it all came
for
out columns was parallel columns, and it had a huge memory in the back there to remember all this because in those days. The cards were only a few K, you know?
Exactly.
Only a few K.
That's a couple of pages, right?
That's all it was. It needed quite a few K just to produce a page.
Okay.
That's right. So it had all this memory in the back. I had to pay thousands of dollars extra for the memory.
Yeah.
And I bought a 300 DPI laser printer. It was a Canon laser printer, which was thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And I bought Adobe font on it, which was another $1,200.
Just for the font cartridge.
Just for the font that went into the machine. So the whole thing was very expensive. I think my first computer was about $12,000 or $14,000.
Wow.
For the computer, the hard drive, it was a tower, the keyboard, and quite a few $1,000s for the 300 DPI printer.
Yep.
Now 300 DPI not good enough.
Yep.
Then I bought for a quarter of the price. I bought a 600 DPI, and it was quite readable.
Yep.
Quite readable. It was much better. So from then on, I produced the magazines on 600 DPI.
Yep.
And that the last magazines are all, and you can't tell the difference between photo typeset and 600 DPI.
Okay.
So,
talking electronics, how many people did you have working for you at the peak of the...
Once I had 8.
8? And you were still working from home?
Yes.
At 35 Rosebourne Avenue?
I built on the back.
You built on the back?
Yes, I built on the back.
And you have 8 people working there on site?
Well, yes, because I had 2 people in one room, 2 people in another room, 2 people in another room, and 2 people in the lounge room.
Right.
And I had...
Okay, so the house was fully occupied as a workspace?
Yes,
really?
that's right, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Oh,
I had quite a few rooms in the house.
Yeah.
I built on... it's all a separate area at the back there I built on, and had them all in different rooms, yes.
Excellent. How long did that last, that sort of the peak period?
It was only 2 years.
Only a couple of years?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. It seems to me to be much longer than that from my memory.
No, there was a peak, you see. You said the peak.
Yep.
It built up and up and up to only 2 years of peak, and then just faded away again.
But it was always a mail order business from home, wasn't it?
No, well, I did. I had 3 inputs. I had people coming. Now, what happened is that I employed one boy who stole some things.
Right.
So that we dismissed him on the spot. And of course, his father was furious, rang up the local council, and of course claimed that I'm working for premises at the back of the house, which is illegal. I said, well, is it illegal? They said, oh, yes, it's illegal to run a shop at the back. I said, well, what's the definition of a shop? He said, oh, well, you've got things on display. I said, no, that's not a definition of a shop. The definition of a shop is it's got a cash register.
Oh, right.
I said, we don't have a cash register.
There you go.
So it's not a shop.
So that was the legal definition.
That's right.
That's how you got around it.
Yes, because you can have things sitting out there because we're an assembly place.
Yep.
And he said, well, and the second thing he said, oh, well, I see you've got advertisements here and you're promoting your address in the advertisements. I said, well, that's by law. I said, when you have a mail or business, you must have the address as well. That's part of the law. So that doesn't hold water either.
Right.
So that he tried to close me down.
Right.
I said, well, you can't close me down. First of all, I've been here 8 years.
Yep.
Secondly, the neighbours haven't complained. Thirdly, it's not a shop.
Yep.
It is purely, we are assembling things here and we are designing things for the magazine, which is not no features of a shop.
Yeah.
The fact that people come here is because they want to come and buy the stock.
Yep.
Buy an item, which we can't refuse them. If they come here, we don't say that there's a refusal. You can't come because by law you have to allow people to come because otherwise you classify it as a subversive industry.
Right.
If you don't allow people to see what you're doing, it's subversive industry.
Interesting.
So yes, that's right. So that's how you get around it.
Right.
So that because there are some very nasty people.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. Then they tried to bring around health inspector with health and things like that, and came in and do you have a first aid kit? I said, what do you need a first aid kit for? Oh well, what are you doing here? I said, well, we only sold, or someone might burn themselves with soldering iron. I said, fellas, come in here. Now, there was 5 of you all soldering. Now, you've been here how many years? How many times have you burnt yourself? So, they've been here, we've got 20 years all up.
Yep.
No one's burnt themselves so far. So, why do you need...
Likelihood's low.
That's right. So that you... Now, I said, the second thing, you have to have 2 toilets. Why do you need 2 toilets? Oh, because there might be females. Well, there aren't no females here.
Yep.
So, you've got 1 toilet here and 1 toilet in the house. So, we do have 2 toilets. So he tried everything to close us down because health and inspection and things like that. So we got away with it from them. So as I say, that you do find some nasty people trying to close you down, trying all these tricks in the book. And I said that, isn't it funny that going back those years, I said, isn't it funny how the government is trying to promote cottage industry?
Yeah.
Because they wanted to stop people from driving all the way to work unnecessarily. Yep. You're trying to promote cottage industry, and then when someone does have cottage industry, you're trying to close them down.
I know. It's, it's ridiculous,
it's maddening.
How do you think things would have changed if Jim Rowe had accepted that thing and you went into, who knows, right? And you probably wouldn't have been a success. You would have.
I don't know.
Well, you might have probably still would have sold the kits.
Yes,
right?
I could have done. Yes, things could have changed then. But the thing is that it just did die away. The whole every year you could just see it dying away and dying away.
Oh, it's a shame.
That's right. Because the Chinese just came on and on and on and just improved. Everything just improved.
Any other stories from the old days? Thousands of stories. We haven't got enough tape. We haven't got enough battery.
That's right. Well, a young boy came to me and he was in grade 6. Another brilliant person, but you didn't know at the time.
Of course.
Came to me, bought a kit. On a Saturday morning with his father.
Yeah.
Pulled up, bought a kit. Came back and bought another kit. Came back and bought another kit. And I lost track. And he came back and he wanted, I think it was a tech computer. I said, you can't buy it. He said, why not? I said, because you've got to make at least 8 projects. He said, yes, I have. I've made 8 projects.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And he built the computer. And another, I've seen him again.
Fantastic.
As another brilliant person. But he was in grade 6 when he came.
That's fantastic.
That's
right. I had nothing back. I had nobody who was
to help you. That's right.
My parents, they supported me by, letting me do it, but they didn't know anything about it.
Well, there was nothing available.
There was nothing.
It was only the Tandy stores.
I know.
And their kits were rubbish.
That's all I had. All I had was the magazines I could get from my local newsagent that I could ride my bike to. Yes. I remember riding my bike to the newsagent because you didn't have a regular schedule at all. So I'd ride my bike there a couple of times a week and go to the newsagent. Oh, is there a new Talking Electronics magazine or is there a new...
That's right. A great advancement. The whole thing. Well, just by Penny. The fact that the very first day I sent it to Gordon and Gotch, they sent it out on Friday, and it all went to the stores on the Friday. And on the Monday, I got 80 orders in the post.
Wham!
And from that day on, I never looked back.
Right.
Because the phone kept ringing. As I said before, there was 3 ways I got it. I got people coming in. I got a phone orders. The phone never stopped ringing.
Right.
And I got mail each day.
Yep.
And that first day, I got 80 orders from the mail because it was the Friday, Saturday, and it all came down from all the different places. I think it went out on a Wednesday or Thursday. Yep. It was in the shops on the Friday. The people bought it on the Saturday and on the Monday, and that was when it started.
Fantastic.
I never thought it would be so successful because nobody ever explained it. Because the other magazines never backed anything up.
Yeah,
as I said from Electronics, they're the boards. He sold 2 or 3 out of 20.
Yeah.
And they were just a total failure. So I knew what not to do.
Right.
And that's what you learn. And that's the whole idea. What not to do. So whenever you work for somebody, you learn the way they behave. And you say that you won't behave like that. And I learned from my teachers how not to teach. Because when I was a teacher, I went along to the education department. They said, what subjects are you taking? I said, I'm taking electronics and I'm taking physics and I'm taking mathematics at the technical school. They said, we need a teacher on Monday down at such and such a school. Turn up. And I went into the class and started teaching the very next day. Right. No training, no help, nothing at all. You walk in.
It was fantastic.
And that's the only, I didn't learn what to do. Yeah. I learned what not to do with the way you teach, how to teach people, how to treat people.
Yeah.
And that's the secret in this life.
Yep.
Because all those teachers that I had were failures.
Right.
They were failures.
Yeah. I've had so many who couldn't teach anything at all. I'm sitting there going, and I would know the stuff, and I'm sitting there going, shaking my head, just going, oh my God, you know, these kids aren't learning anything, you know, and it's just.
And that's why it's so important for you to have these videos, because each little video teaches one more little thing.
Little tiny things.
That's right. Just and that's the way. That's the way you do it. One little thing at a time. And you're building up a library, because now it's all identified. And that's what I did with mine. I tried to put a library in the front of all the different words, of all the different things we'd covered. And it was just amazing how many topics we'd covered just in those 25 magazines. There was an enormous number of topics we'd covered. And I put a glossary in the back, and we just covered so many areas. And that's why the internet is so wonderful, because that's where you can learn. You don't have to spend anything on textbooks, absolutely nothing. You can do every single thing you want for free, absolutely not spending 1 single cent.
You've just got to put the effort in.
Just look on the net. Just look on Google, and everything is there. It's wonderful.
Fantastic.
Someone's put it there for you.
And there's tons of stuff on your website. I'll put up the link. It's talkingelectronics.com.
Yes.
Excellent.
That's right.
Thank you very much, Colin.
I put your link there, and that's the whole thing. And that's what people like too. They like to come to the site where there's other links, because they just go on and on and on, and just spider their way right through to all sorts of different things.
Well,
I'll see you next time.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
Wonderful day.
Thanks, Colin.